Remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Welcome back, my beautiful people, and maybe even a few Mad Hatters. I just want to know if you've read any of my assignments, even once. Comment down below. In this episode, we will explore the compromised chivalric front group called the Knights of the Golden Circle. This fraternal society started out as a mostly innocent, but was quickly compromised and overtaken by its true puppet masters, the Hidden Hand, who whispered and wished to see the destruction of the American nation and the reincarnation of a new and glorious empire called the Golden Circle. So sit back and pour yourself some tea and enjoy some tarts, Mad Hatters, because this tea party is about to get started. Our story begins with the condition of the country long before President Lincoln came to Washington. You see, the cause of the Lincoln assassination can be traced back to the calling of the Congress of Vienna in 1814. Pope Pius VII restored the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, which had been abolished by Pope Clement XIV, July 21st, 1773, on the grounds that it was immoral, dangerous, and was a menace to the life of the papacy. With the restoration of this order, the execution of the secret treaty of Vienna was placed in their keeping, which gave them the responsibility to put down any liberal government and restore the monarchy throughout the Old and the New World. But the papacy had a bigger plan and a vision for their globalist church and its influence. Now, let's fast forward to about the close of the year 1834. There were to be found in Charleston, New Orleans, and some other southern cities a few politicians who earnestly desired to re-establish the African slave trade and the acquisition of slave territory. These men formed clubs called Southern Rights Clubs, also known as the SRC. They had signs and recognitions by which they made themselves known. In the year of 1850, the SRCs had become more numerous, and their organizations was more highly perfected. In 1855, it was about this time that a certain George Spickley, having his espoused the cause of the SRC, took it in hand to reduce a more perfect state of organization. He chastened himself with the highly chivalrous name of the Knights of the Golden Circle. When it first started, the KGC was seen by some as a harmless gentleman's club that provided a sense of camaraderie and adventure for its members. A contemporary newspaper article from the Cincinnati Enquirer, dated October 13, 1854, provided a glimpse into how the KGC was viewed initially. A new order has been instituted in the city called the Knights of the Golden Circle. The object of the order is said to be the expansion of American power and influence over the whole North American continent and the acquisition of such portions of adequate territory as may be necessary to give us the control of the entire Gulf of Mexico. Some viewed the KGC's ambition with skepticism, seeing themselves as unrealistic and potentially dangerous. A letter to the editor, published in the New York Times on October 21st, 1854, warned the designs of the secret order are of the most extensive and dangerous character. They contemplate nothing less than the overthrow of the existing governments of the Central America and Mexico. The KGC's activity and influence varied across the country. In some regions, it was little more than a social club, while in others, particularly in the South, it became more politically active, with members advocating for slavery expansion and states' rights. As the KGC grew, it became compromised and infected and associated with pro-slavery and secessionist sentiments, and some of its members were implicated in plots to seize federal arsenals and forts. In the lead-up to the Civil War, this caused concern among those who feared the KGC's true intentions. A report from the Richmond Enquirer in 1860 noted, quote, "The Order of the Knights of the Golden Circle is a Southern organization, pure and simple, and was got up for political purposes. It has a secret agenda, it has a secret organization, and its members are bound by a secret oath." Now, my dear Mad Hatters, this wasn't any normal oath. No. This was a sinister and dangerous oath given to many who joined. I may take this oath under penalty of having my body severed into 4 parts, which each part cast in the 4 cardinal directions, should I ever betray the sacred trust. I also swear to rally to the side of the loyal Democrats from the 1st to the 4th signal, no matter their location. The secrets of this order, including signs, passwords, grips, shall never be revealed to anyone lacking proper authorization. Additionally, I promise to use my best efforts to bring all loyal Democrats into the circle of hosts and work against the Yankee abolition or any other faction seeking to dismantle our union. So help me God. But wait, there's more. You see, this oath was only given to those of the lower ranks. But those that were considered to be the elite and special were introduced into the actual inner circle and into the final degree, the most dark and sinister in nature. From the journal of John Surratt, a conspirator who escaped to Rome and hid in the protection of the Pope himself, he writes, "Who comes here? Only who is true to our cause," was the reply from one near me. "How is he known to be true?" was the question next uttered by the first voice. "By the recommendation of a tried knight," replied my supposed guide. For the voice was strange in my ear, as indeed were they all. "He can then be trusted?" were the next words uttered. "Such is our belief," was the reply. "But should he fail and betray us, what then?" "He will learn the penalty soon enough. Advance." We moved onward a few steps when the same cold contact with the steel and the same sharp but slightly puncture of the breast was felt on a former occasion. This time I did not flinch, although the sharp pain was as unexpected as before. Again I heard a solemn voice utter, as a slow and measured tone, the ominous words, "Those who would pass here must face both fire and steel." "Are you willing to do so?" asked another, addressing me, having, after a few moments' consideration, answered in the affirmative. I was again told to advance, and I commanded to kneel on what seemed to be a cushion, as it yielded slightly to the pressure of my knees. While in this position, an oath, terrible, horrible, and appalling, was administered by the same solemn voice, and, while kneeling, I had to repeat the words after him in a slow and distinct tone. one hand resting on something cold as ice, and the other on a book that appeared to be open, the obligation taken. I was then informed that it would be necessary to remember every word I had uttered. "Are you willing to abide by the obligation?" asked the voice. What could I do or say? Refuse? I dare not, for I had felt the sharp point of the sword in my breast, and the words of the horrible oath still rang in my ears and vibrated throughout my aching brain. I was powerless to refuse, and therefore answered faintly, "It is true," in the affirmative. "You remember the penalty?" asked the voice. Could I have ever forgotten it? Remember it. "Brother knights," exclaimed the voice, in a solemn tone, "recall to the mind of him who now kneels here the penalty of betrayal, either by sign, word, or deed." The sound like thunder rang around me. The clanging of arms broke in former almost dead-like silence, and 100 or more voices murmured, hissed, whispered, or groaned out 3 times the single word, "Death, death, death." My senses almost reeled under the influence of the fearful warning. "It is well," said the voice. "Proceed. Show him all." A chorus of voices repeated the words, and the next instant, the bandage was quickly taken off my eyes. For a few seconds my vision was blinded by a light, the dazzling light that fell upon me at that moment, and before I could recover from the strain thus inflicted upon the organs of sight, I felt a number of sharp, pointy piercings in my breast, back, and side. I gave one glance around me, and amid what appeared to be a cloud of fire stood a number of armed men clothed in coats of mail, their helmeted heads surmounted by red and white feathers, and their faces covered with barred visors of metallic plates. Each had a sword in his hand, and every one of the points were directed at my almost paralyzed body, puncturing the flesh. Gradually my sight became restored, and one by one, the objects before and around me were visible. The mailed knights stood as still as statues. I then perceived for the first time that I was kneeling before an altar on which burned a dull blue flame, that my left hand had rested on the open Bible, and my right, horror of horrors, on the face of a corpse. Death. How the words rang in my ears. With a horrifying glance, I looked down towards the floor and beheld another corpse, upon whose breast I had been compelled to kneel. Death. Again the words rang in my ears. I raised my eyes to those around, saw no glance of encouragement beyond those helmeted faces, and could comprehend nothing but the bright, polished swords presented at me on every side. Death. Still that pitiless word was present. A mailed knight stood before the altar, in the direction which I had heard the solemn voice, and with his unsheathed sword had pointed silently to the ghastly object on which my right hand had rested. Not a word emanated his lips, but his sword's point echoed with appalling, terrible words. Death. Darkness appeared to spread itself before my vision. I felt my senses leave me, and a nameless horror took possession over the whole soul, and I saw and knew nothing more. Now, my dear Mad Hatters, do you actually believe secret organizations like this don't exist today? Do you honestly think that many in Hollywood, the media, and our government institutions are not beyond such oaths and obligations? If you are truly mad, then you're nothing, and you know nothing. You are like Alice, naive and running stupid races.
and you are dead.